Pondering the problems with pareidolia. Now is a good time to bring up a problem of conscience, which in turn leads to another important aspect to deciphering this ancient alphabet. If you read scriptures, you will learn about conscience, that is, right and wrong, truth and lies. For some, the concept of a good conscience can be a bit foreign and confusing. Some ignore their conscience while others seek to grow and develop a good conscience. The problem at hand is, it seems that this Alef, or ox constellation, occupies a similar region of stars as the Babylonian bull of heaven, as well as the Roman or Latin Taurus. The bull is also incorporated into Greek mythology. Throughout history, it appears that many nations worshipped cows, bulls, calves, and oxen. Even Israel at times would worship a calf idol. For example, Mount Sinai. Later, King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, set up 2 calves to worship and caused Israel to sin. A Jewish man named Paul warned the Christians of such worship in Romans 1. Because, although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds, and 4-footed animals, and creeping things. It is herein where one's conscience instructs them that the ancient worship of 4-footed animals is something that must be avoided. This leads to a question. Why do many nations share a similar animal for that region of the night sky? Why does Alef, one of the letters that is used to write scripture, assign to this same area of space? To answer this, we first need to look at how scholars have catalogued celestial objects. Then we will apply the same methodology to the region of sky where the ox is found. Find the ox, then find the Alef. Today, there are many star catalogues to choose from. Star catalogues have the following 2 properties in common. There is first a numbered index in the catalogue. Second, if the object resembles a recognizable object, then they assign it a common name. It is this common name that we will be considering. Our brain is always working to recognize faces, animals, and other familiar shapes. Our minds have the ability to quickly pick them out and distinguish between similar shapes. For example, cow, dog, cat. Similar with head, tail, and 4 legs, yet our brain instantly knows the difference between these. Another example, baby, child, adult. Again, similar but instantaneously distinguishable from each other. Generally speaking, in astronomy, the common names are assigned to nebula. Nebula means clouds, and is used to describe clouds of dust, gases, as well as other clusters of stars. Here is a quick video explaining types of nebula.
Nebulae come in different shapes and sizes, but there are 4 main types of nebulae: planetary nebulae, reflection nebulae, emission nebulae, and absorption nebulae. And the word nebula comes from the Latin word for cloud.
Now, when a scholar suggests a common name for a nebula, some people can see it and others cannot. One may feel sad or frustrated if they do not see the shape that the scholar described in the common name of the nebula. It may be that the features are hard to pick out, and we feel like we've failed in locating it. This can be likened unto a child who is struggling to read and write using letters of the alphabet. There is no need to be upset if you don't see what the scholar described. Remember, some of the things that we are attempting to decrypt have been lost and have gone unnoticed for thousands of years. Here are some modern examples of nebula. Let's start with the Dark Horse Nebula. This one is easy to pick out today when you live in the southern hemisphere. Are you trying to give me nightmares? Next, let's look at what's called the bird or the Tinkerbell triplet. The paragraph reads, "Using ESO's Very Large Telescope, an international team of astronomers has discovered a stunning, rare case of a triple merger of galaxies. This system, which astronomers have dubbed the Bird, although it bears resemblance to a cosmic Tinkerbell, is composed of two massive spiral galaxies and a third irregular galaxy." Now, notice how the scholars have described this in three different ways. First, the triple merger of galaxies. Next, the bird. And finally, the Tinkerbell triplet. We all know that there is no milk, no bird, and no Tinkerbell trapped inside ESO's Very Large Telescope. However, the common names are a convenient way to describe and reference the shapes. It turns out that our minds are very good at memorizing new information by relating the new memories and shapes to something that's already familiar. Next, the Horsehead Nebula. The common names for these nebula are based on observing the clouds in the visible light spectrum. Special cameras today can capture images from various wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum. This NASA website has a graphic describing the instruments that can capture various wavelengths. It is an interesting read, which we cannot go into details right now. This Horsehead Nebula appears differently in the infrared spectrum. The point we need to understand is the common names are based on identifiable shapes from the visible light spectrum. We are not looking at infrared or ultraviolet or other wavelengths in the spectrum. Next is the DNA Nebula. We can find many more common names by Googling for popular nebulas. Sometimes scholars describe the same nebula shape in multiple ways. For example, Messier 17 has at least 5 proper names: Omega Nebula, Horseshoe Nebula, Checkmark Nebula, Swan Nebula, and the Lobster Nebula. At first, this may seem confusing. However, combining the various descriptions of the same nebula creates a more accurate memory of the details seen. These scholars made a suggestion as to what we are looking at. Oftentimes our minds immediately recognize the shape they describe. The technical term for this is pareidolia. You know, when a fluffy cloud or a floor tile, a rock formation, resembles something familiar. It's when our brains instantaneously associate the random patterns with known objects. If you have a friend that has taken art class, they most likely did a unit on pareidolia. In his notebooks, Leonardo da Vinci wrote of pareidolia as a device for painters. He wrote, "If you look at any walls spotted with various stains or with a mixture of different kinds of stones, if you are about to invent some scene, you will be able to see in it a resemblance of various different landscapes, adorned with mountains, rivers, rocks, trees, plains, wide valleys, and various groups of hills. You will also be able to see diverse combats of figures in quick movement, and strange expressions of faces, and outlandish costumes, and an infinite number of things which you can then reduce into separate and well-conceived forms. There are also studies that have found healthy individuals are more apt to see pareidolia than those with mental disorders. It is important to note that when we spend time analyzing the nebula, that our minds will recognize general shapes and patterns. These nebula shapes will never be like a clear photo displayed in star pixels. Rather, general shapes with a few distorted or blurred features, yet still recognizable. Matching the descriptions to shapes is intended to help with recognizing and tracking regions of space and the passage of time. To summarize, this study has no intention of worshipping or idolizing nebula shapes that we are about to point out. It is enough to recognize and acknowledge where Babylonians, Greeks, Romans, and people like King Jeroboam the son of Nebat could have seen a recognizable shape in the heavens and made a poor lifestyle choice to worship it. Yet, it is necessary to pick out the shapes in order to understand this ancient calendar time-tracking system. In the next chapter, we will find the ox to find the Alef.